Politicians, it seems, pay endless lip service to education. There have been all these studies. There have been school reform. We have parochial schools, homeschooling, private schools, public schools, charter schools. This very day in Chicago, we have the 5th annual New Schools Expo. It's going on at Navy Pier. It's about the city's best charter schools. Lori Desautels is a Ph.D. She teaches at the School of Education at Marian University, not the one in Fond du Lac, I just learned, but the one in Indianapolis. I wanted to say Fond du Lac because that's the home of Jonathan Brandmeier, who's our morning host here.
Okay.
You also wrote a book about your passion, about your insights. How May I Serve You? Revelations in Education. Are we raising, Lori, a generation of test takers now in America?
You know, we are in a very chaotic and very difficult time in education. There's no doubt about it. But with my work in teaching graduate students who are actually in the charter schools and in the public schools, and also my work going into those schools, we have an educational crisis. And that crisis is about emotional engagement. We have students who are bored, who are disengaged, and the level of standardized testing that that's occurring in our schools is just overwhelming, and we're not reaching them.
I have spoken in the CSP, the Chicago Public Schools, and one time on the south side, I think it was the south side, sometimes the west side I go, he said, don't worry, they're not even going to be engaged. He had already surrendered to the demon here.
Right.
That means that he's probably a terrible teacher.
Right.
He's telling me, a guest speaker, that the kids aren't going to react. They're not going to be engaged in what I'm going to say. Don't worry and don't take it personally.
You know, and I want to say something to that, because we have fabulous educators and we have students that have genius capacity that we're not reaching, because our standardized tests are testing to math and language. And we have got to engage, we've got to excite, we've got to create curiosity and ignite these untapped potentials in all of our students and our teachers.
Marva Collins, a teacher in Chicago, years ago, they did 60 Minutes on this. She took kids from hopeless home environments, and they graduated high school with opinions about Shakespeare, able to do advanced math. 60 Minutes went back 20-some-odd years later and tried to find as many of his original graduating class as they could. These kids, heads of banks, heads of philanthropic institutions, partners in law firms, and to a person they said, if not for Marva Collins believing in me and forcing me to go through this process, I would be dead, I would be on drugs, I would be pregnant, a single parent, in jail, and because that was what the hopeless experience was in their own environments.
Yes.
But to me, that is criminal, how we are squandering so much potential, never realized talent in this world.
Absolutely. And we are approaching this from a top down, and we've got to begin at a grassroots movement. We've got to look at our students. We've got to begin asking those who are directly involved, who are the students, the teachers, and the parents. We've got to begin asking the question, what do you need? How can I help? And how can we begin to emotionally connect one another to the curriculum? And
so what is at the core of your message? You have written about this idea of chronic stress as being a key problem. What do you mean by that? And is that the foundational point that you build your whole philosophy on?
Absolutely, because for a child to become engaged in the curriculum and in the subject matter, we have students walking into every classroom in our public schools, some charter schools, and again, some private schools, who are dealing with abuse at home. They're dealing with bullying. They're dealing with impoverished
the
environments.
worst possible conditions to create a stimulated, engaged, pumped-up kid.
Right. So we have to make our content relevant and meaningful. We have to reach out and speak their language, and we have to look at the power of relationships and questions. Now, are teachers doing this? Is this a philosophy, or is this something that's slowly, inexorably being integrated into teaching? Teachers, there are so many fabulous teachers that are doing this, but we have to look at, and I'm going to emphasize our public schools, because we are telling teachers right now that they will have their performance and student growth in their classrooms will be looked at, and they will be
Well, they're talking about that in Chicago right now.
Absolutely. They will be deemed effective or ineffective based on the student growth. But what about those classrooms who 1/3 of those students are special needs students? They could be and probably are very, very bright, but they're not testing well in math and language. So, it goes back to this this holistic approach, this enrichment of not only relationships, but introducing our students to the social studies, to the fine arts, to bringing activity and movement back into our classrooms.
I've always said, for example, history should be by definition something that is vitally engaging, but yet it's taught in a way that it's just marble-headed busts through history and dates and wars and dust-covered
isolated
images.
facts.
And there's no connection to any of that. Is that an example of where we're doing it wrong?
Yes, and I think that when we tie in the power of neuroscience, the brain, our brains are wired for novelty and for patterns and for conceptual learning. And when we tie in that and we make content very relevant and meaningful, for instance, how many students want to come in and be taught the power or the importance of punctuation marks and grammar? So what do? You take their favorite book, you take a text, Harry Potter, and you take out all the punctuation marks, all the question marks, all the capitalization, and then you have them read it. Yeah. And it makes a difference.
That's really clever. I like that.
I mean, there are so many ways that we can begin to engage them and make them feel important and capable.
Lori, where can we learn more about some of the thinking that you do?
Well, I have a website that is my passion, and that website is www.revelationsineducation.com.
Let me write that down. And that's the name of the book, too.
Yes, the name of the book is right. The name of the book is How May I Serve You? Revelations in Education, and it's ready to order on my website.
But it gives parents and empowers them with what they should be asking about and talking about, say, at school board meetings or with their teachers.
Yes, we've got to get back to parents, students, and educators. These are the key components.
Lori, I'm fired up. Thank you so much for coming up from Indianapolis and talking with us.